probably heard about it, antimicrobial resistance or antibiotics resistance. The doctors say happens when germs develop the ability to defeat the drugs designed to kill them. My name is Gloria Milimu, and in this episode of Health Watch, we tell you why doctors are calling for concerted effort in ending this scourge. Antibiotics have over the years been used to treat communicable diseases. However, the emergence of antibiotic resistance continues to threaten the effectiveness of successful treatment of infections and also undermines advancements made in health and medicine. Whereas these vital drugs play a critical role in reducing the burden of communicable diseases, improper utilization of antibiotics, non-compliance to prescriptions, poor prescribing habits, and use of fake or counterfeit medicines are just but among factors contributing to the resistance. Dr. Dorothy Ayuak is a pharmacist by profession. She reveals that a number of infections are becoming harder to treat as the antibiotics used to treat them have become less effective. These infections include pneumonia, tuberculosis, gonorrhea, foodborne diseases, among others.
We have about 2.8 million people who either suffer from an antibiotic resistant infection, and it can contribute to more than 35,000 deaths annually. We have the challenge locally in being able to collect the correct data, even collecting data to know what is our current scenario. So we can just hazard that probably 10 to 15% locally of the infections would be attributed to AMR.
The World Health Organization estimates that 50% of antibiotics in many countries are used inappropriately, such as in treatment of viruses, while they only treat bacteria infections. Also, the use of the wrong broader spectrum antibiotic contributes to the spread of the resistance.
There's a lot of use of the penicillins, the cephalosporins, and then these days with COVID, there's a big rush to go and buy also from the macronide group. That's the azithromycin, because you think it's a short-term treatment, you get better faster, and you feel like you're doing something about the flu or other viral symptom. And I want to highlight also, you can get an infection from a fungus, or a parasite. So sometimes we are treating a fungi with what is supposed to be used for treating a bacteria, or you're treating something which is a parasite with an antibacterial agent. So we have that misuse of the drugs, and sometimes you might feel it was a self-limiting condition, meaning that within 3 days you'd have felt better anyway. And now when you take your antibiotic 2 days, you feel better. And then you go and propagate that to somebody else.
Similarly, this overuse and misuse of antibiotics is also common in children whose parents opt to buy medication over the counter to ease their symptoms.
Most people really like to look after their children well, and when children are sick, especially when one cannot go to see the doctor, the first thing you want to go and do is get medicine to treat the children. Now, my experience is that when a child has a fever, most parents think that this child needs and must have an antibiotic. This is the major problem. Because of that, there is a lot of overuse and misuse of antibiotics, especially in children. This is because, especially for the children under 5 years, those in kindergarten, and especially those ones in kindergarten and lower primary school, they frequently get viral upper respiratory infections, which is just viral common colds, and sometimes they can get very high fever, and one thinks they require an antibiotic to bring the illness down. In most cases, this is not the case. Most of those infections or illnesses are caused by viral infections. And one can tell by perhaps taking a little history, knowing how the child got sick, and by looking at the child, it might be easy to differentiate. So I would urge parents not to rush to buy antibiotics for their children before a diagnosis has been made.
The emergence and spread of antibiotics resistance has also been attributed to medicine quality, where some medicines have a lower dose of the active ingredient.
Still are faced with that challenge. We call them substandard falsified medicines. We're still faced with that challenge of having these products in the market. Like I said, a number of the outlets may not be legal or registered by our regulatory agency, the Pharmacy and Poisons Board. So in the interest to make a quick buck, you find people now, they will look for what is the cheapest formulation that is available so that they can make the highest returns in terms of profit. So we can just keep engaging the public to look out for places which are properly registered. And
weak pharmaceutical policies have created a conducive environment for unlicensed or untrained people who sell and prescribe drugs to unsuspecting users. Some of the drugs dispensed by non-professionals have far-reaching implications to the normal body functioning of the users. This remains a challenge in taming antimicrobial resistance. Degradation of the environment is also impacting negatively as life-threatening components like antifungals are discharged into the environment unknowingly. Experts say the growing demand for food is putting pressure on the food supply chains and systems, thus creating loopholes in the food control systems. They call for good practices from the primary production level all the way to the consumption level. They believe that this will curtail the transmission of antimicrobial resistance through food. Experts say 95% of infections are self-limiting, meaning they do not require antibiotics. Some of these infections include the common cold, diarrhea, common stomach ache, among others. However, this continued abuse of antibiotics often comes at a heavy cost. This ranges from long hospital stays to use of costly and toxic medication.
I can give you perhaps a scenario where a mother comes having given a child some antibiotic they bought over the counter, and then they come with a child who is more sick, right? Let's say they started off with a viral cold, they used an antibiotic. Sometimes they probably buy a generic one. They may not know how to dose that antibiotic, so they buy a substandard antibiotic, use it at the wrong dose. So by the time they bring a child, say for instance, with pneumonia, I will take into consideration what they have been given before, and most likely that child's illness will be not treatable by the medicine that they have used and has failed. In other words, they will have resistance to that one. So it will be necessary then to choose from a higher antibiotic, and most likely an injectable one. So it means you may hospitalize, use more expensive drugs, and if it's only available as injections, it means a longer hospital stay. So it's perhaps best to get things right at the first time, and to not have used an antibiotic by the time you're going to the doctor, so that the doctor can choose a first-line antibiotic for your child, which in most of the cases works, and it may remove the need to use expensive medicines and shorten your hospital stay.
It's estimated that by the time we get to 2050, we are going to have to spend about 100 trillion, if you look there at the US figures, 100 trillion on dealing with antimicrobial resistant infection. But if we were to invest now heavily on the interventions which have been suggested, vaccination, sanitation, also just training facilities and the policies, we have a national antimicrobial policy document. If we were to invest on those, then we'll spend about 30 billion. But the challenge is 30 billion is still a lot of money. But you may need to spend 30 billion to avoid spending 100 trillion in 2050. So there's that, where we say we're walking a thin line. These are, when you look forward, we think forward, you're going to spend a lot of money just to handle an resistant bug.
To prevent and control the spread of antibiotics resistance, experts are calling for investment in research and development to facilitate development of new antimicrobial agents to treat resistant pathogens.
We need, even as governments, to invest heavily in being able to support industries to be able to come up with new molecules. It's unfortunate that when it comes to the antibiotic, when you're dealing with antimicrobials, the return on investment for companies which probably do the research is not as good as maybe for other lifestyle medicines. If we think about if a patient is going to be hypertensive, they'll be hypertensive for months and months. But if somebody is having an infection, it might be for a week, 3 days, 5 days. So when you're starting to think, what volumes are you going to sell? And then considering we want to also enhance access. So an industry may invest in coming up with a new molecule, but now the other, when we are looking for cheaper, a number of times we call them the generic. When you're looking for a cheaper alternative, they will take that research and now just go straight into marketing. And that, I think, also discourages those who are players in coming up with new molecules from investing in the same. They would instead prefer to invest in where the returns will be higher and will come back, and they will maintain their space in the field for longer. So there I would want to encourage, if we can have our governments, our ministries to being able to support and make it easier for companies to also invest heavily in research and also grow our own scientists. I think we have a lot of, they call it brain dump, where our scientists are leaving to other areas and they are coming up with those inventions there. So if we can also look within our training institutions, what can we do to encourage those who are coming out to think about innovation, think about improving what is in place, so that we can start thinking of what are these new compounds we'll be looking at, and we invest in making them come to market, so that we are not depending on the West to bring us products. We can also be the ones to bring products to the field.
In its effort to reduce the spread, adverse events and cost of antimicrobial resistance, different stakeholders in the health sector, like the World Health Organization, have launched interventions like its global campaign tool dubbed AWARE. It classifies antibiotics into 3 groups: Access Group, Watch Group, and Reserve Group. These groups specify which antibiotics to use for the most common and serious infections, the one that should be available at all times in the healthcare system, and those that must be used sparingly or preserved and used only as the last resort.
There's also been some programs where they have engaged the public, where the Ministry of Health has gone about engaging the public to just have the idea of what health-seeking behaviors they have, how do they interpret instructions with regards to the medicines they are given. We have had documentaries on the same barazas, but we still need to put a lot more effort, particularly targeting those who, I would say, maybe middle class and upper class, who tend to be the ones who demand a lot the use of antibiotics, because if you have a flu, which is generally viral, the patients, to wait for it to run its course, you'll find that those who are middle class, upper class, they do not have the same patients. But if you tell somebody else, probably in the, I would want to say maybe in the other lower social economic sector, they tend to believe you more. But we still have a challenge in that area, because there are a number of these small shops, the Duka la Dawa, that are sprouting all over, because the assumption that you make more money in running the pharmacy shops.
Overall, there is need for antimicrobial guidance in order to tame the menace. This includes simple measures to prevent infections through regular washing of hands, adhering to prescriptions, and avoiding sharing of antibiotics. It also pushes for the use of antibiotics when prescribed. Policymakers have also been called on to regulate and promote the appropriate use and disposal of quality medicines, among other interventions. So, next time you buy antibiotics without a prescription, please think about the danger that lies ahead. Gloria Milemo, KTN News.